There are few things that I like more than getting a nice big juicy directory of mods. But let's be honest, finding a mod that does exactly what you're looking for can be slightly tricky. As it turns out, that was the case with finding mods that modernize the OG STALKER games to a point where they look and play like much newer releases. However, it is important that they are not distracted by too many extras. Just like the old hot chocolate analogy. Let's say STALKER is hot chocolate. You could either adorn the flavor by adding a boatload of spices and call it a better hot chocolate. That is your opinion. Or you could do the right thing and just make the chocolate itself better quality. The creaminess creamier. And give that thick, delicious, dark drink some love and stop making the hot chocolate about you. It's always the people who say, my hot chocolate this, my hot chocolate that, who poison it with spices.
Here, give me that.
How dare you? This is my microphone. I am David Attenborough, and you will not...
Thank you, David, for the intro, but I'm back because I've been testing probably 200 hours worth of STALKER with mods upon mods upon mods for the original trilogy, with a lot of rejected mods too. Here are the best first playthrough friendly mods to get those of you who have yet to get past the finish line of the OG STALKER trilogy finally across, as well as anyone looking for another playthrough, but enhanced. A lot of dudes and dudettes have yet to finish the OG trilogy, and according to all y'all, it simply happens to be that the OGs look outdated and unattractive, with some of you saying in the comments that it is outdated. Now, respectfully, that's not quite how I see it, and I'm gonna straight up say it. The STALKER games are fundamentally ahead of their time, aesthetically outdated, and functionally misunderstood. That's right. Ask yourself, is STALKER really a survival horror game? Hang on to that thought about survival horror while we navigate this 5-episode series where we go back and review the OG trilogy with mods that I found to be first playthrough friendly. It's gonna be a wild ride. And to the vanilla purists, what do you think this is? Nintendo? I agree with a lot of your points, but there are simply a lot of people who can't find themselves to finish the OG games vanilla, or people who want another playthrough but more fresh. This video is for them, so cut us all a little bit of slack. You're cool, but just watch how these guys fall in love with the modded games and come back to them and play vanilla in a subsequent playthrough, only to fall in love with that again. Just you watch. I promise. And to the Anomaly players, you're going to want to stick to the end of this video because I have a special treat just for you. But without further ado, let's get to it. We're going to modernize, see what I did there, the OG trilogy so that those of you who haven't completed that elusive first playthrough because the game looks too old or something or the sort, can finally soak your toes in the mud. And you might be surprised to find out that for all of Anomaly and its big mod packs' merits, they only offer a taste of what the STALKER experience truly is. For each game, I'll do my best to give you drop-in mods, which should work flawlessly by dropping files over a vanilla install, as easy as that. But some of these are full engine overhaul options, which are usually a little different to install and often run standalone. So, it's a go!
What the fuck was that?
As an unofficial bonus, I've also included wildcard mods that are great and are designed mostly in service of the OG experience, but they're not quite first playthrough friendly, like our very first showcase, Radiophobia 3! Shadow of Chornobyl is by far the oldest and crudest of the STALKER games and really does need the most work, and Radiophobia 3 is the best looking and the best playing remake of Shadow of Chornobyl, but it also breaks away from the Shadow of Chornobyl experience a bit too much at times. Most of the story is intact, yes, but there are too many gameplay and level design changes here for me to still fully recommend it as a Shadow of Chornobyl replacement. If anything, it's SoC in a parallel universe. A universe in which people peg each other instead of shaking hands. But I digress. I wish its creators had also created a straight remaster of the original game because even though I love Radiophobia 3, deep down, I think an SoC remaster is what we all really want. But the only way to experience Shadow of Chernobyl looking and playing this good is through Radiophobia itself, so take that as my bonus recommendation. For my official recommendation, I tried many remasters of Shadow of Chernobyl for this video, and while I like drop-in mod packs like Vanilla Stalker Overhaul, the Compatibility mod pack, and full engine overhauls like Shadow of Chernobyl Enhanced and OGSR, some of these have a little too much stuff or are still not polished enough. So the one I liked best was Memories of the Zone. Let's call it MODs. It, like Radiophobia 3, runs off an improved version of the Stalker engine called the Old Good Stalker Remake, aka OGSR, and that's a mod pack in and of itself. And Memories of the Zone is pretty much the same Shadow of Chernobyl experience, just running on a newer, more stable, and efficient version of the X-Ray engine, and Memories of the Zone adds a few tweaks that modernize the experience, like a cleaner HUD, new weapon models, damage profiles, and abundant bug fixes. I would have preferred that they used Call of Pripyat's weapon models instead of the OWR. That way they preserve the Stalker authenticity, but that's not really a major issue for me. Memories of the Zone runs standalone and is absolutely terrific. The only downside to it is that getting it to run off Steam or GOG is going to be really tricky, so you're not going to be logging hours for this one if that's something you want. And as a standalone, it means that you do not need to own SoC to play this mod, but please, don't play mods without buying SoC. That's not cool. Piracy of abandonware is one thing, but SoC isn't abandonware. Keep in mind that mods includes an English voice pack. The way you install that is by deleting the original folder's voice files and replacing them with the files in the ENG folder, or just delete the original folder and rename the ENG file to the correct name. Do not just drag and drop the English files and overwrite, that will not work. There's also a drop-in option too for the original if you want to run it off Steam or GOG to log hours. Xpress Tuning's Remaster Ultimate Edition, oh that's a mouthful, is the mod pack of my choice for this after trying a significant number of others. Aside from giving you ridiculous jump height, I can say without any hesitation that this little mod pack is perfect at doing what it says it does. Basically makes a 2007 game look a few years newer with the OWR weapon overhaul of course, and I can justify it here because SoC's weapon models didn't age too great. It plays very well, looks pretty good, and unlike Memories of the Zone, it will log in your hours on Steam or GOG. Why do I say that like it's really important? It may or may not be for you. But another advantage is that you can stack even more mods on top of it. So if you want to implement a weapon damage revision or modify the gun sounds themselves, which by the way, I love the MW 2019 sound overhaul. That is something you can absolutely do. And side by side, Memories of the Zone and Xpress Tuning's Remaster go about refreshing the Shadow of Chernobyl experience in their own ways, but in my book, they both succeed and get a strong recommendation. Clear Sky is a game that a lot of people say should be skipped. To those people, I only ask one question.
And who the fuck are you?
No! Clear Sky actually has the most character out of all three games, as well as my favorite gameplay loop. No, the story isn't the best, and the vanilla weapons look better than SoC, but perform pretty poorly until you upgrade them. But with the right mods, Clear Sky becomes better than the other two games in their vanilla state, story excluded. So there is still a great game in here. And now that I mentioned the right mods, it looks like Dead Sky 2.0 could be a good wildcard option. But that's not out yet, and I do plan on reviewing that as soon as it drops. So, if you're watching this in the future, Hakuna Matata. And if you want to see Dead Sky in the future, swaffle the subscribe button. In the meantime, here's the actual wildcard mod that you can play as of the upload date. Less Fallout Overhaul is Clear Sky on steroids and methamphetamines. And wow, LFO can look very good. Sure, it does add a heavy-handed touch of spice into the hot chocolate. I gotta bring back the hot chocolate analogy. So it's like 60% faithful to the OG experience, and it may be barely fine for a first playthrough, but probably not. Treat it with the same vein as Radiophobia 3, or even more. But this is a mod that the Misery, Anomaly, and Gamma players get to rejoice. There's a stupidly unbalanced economy and has an illness system that you cannot avoid, forcing you to splash 10k every time you need a single pill. Who thought of this? Martin Shkreli? The only reason this is here is to take money away from you and handicap you. Fortunately, you can wait until you're pretty advanced in the illness to take the pill, and it only builds up enough to take the pill a handful of times in a playthrough. But still, you might spend 100k on pills over time if you go for a long playthrough. So for that reason, I only recommend this Overhaul mod to people who really enjoy having a stick up their bum when they play Stalker. It's good, but it certainly isn't conventional fun. Regardless, the guns in this mod are very good, the graphics are pretty stunning, especially with the volumetric effects in play.
The zone only the bandits are entitled to have all the things that they really want. And we will always hold ground because we're thugs and you are not. And we the bandits always hold the bad places in the Chernobyl exclusion zone.
But mind you, it is poorly optimized and seemingly overly demanding on the CPU side of things especially, particularly in single-threaded performance, so keep that in mind. But overall, LFO's gunfighting is very good, carrying the entire mod on its back at times. It feels very modern, the graphical improvements are remarkable, although I will say turning off the bloom effects is something I strongly recommend because it looks like you're walking around with foggy glasses on if you don't. I also suggest using the game's built-in launcher to tweak graphics to your liking before booting the game, but all in all, LFO gets a strong recommendation for those of you who really enjoy a miserable Stalker experience. For those of you who weren't dropped as babies, I think that the best way to play Clear Sky right now is with ABR. Its sole goal is to improve Clear Sky as a first-person shooter, giving you better weapons and weapon diversity. The only key change between this mod and OGCS is that you can't join the bandit faction, and stashes have been replaced by more aggressive looting. I made an entire video about this mod. That's how good it is, so swaffle the card on your screen or start swinging a helicopter so you can swaffle the link in the description once you're done with this video. It's great, believe me. Some of you might be asking, where is Arsenal Overhaul? And of course I know you don't mean the new one, the weird one, the old one. Well, it's not here because it wrecks the faction radios and I can't have anyone play Clear Sky for the first time and miss Bandit Radio or even think that the Duty Radio sounds like this. Finally, the crown jewel of the series, Call of Pripyat. While I did say that Clear Sky had the most character, it is also hard to argue against Call of Pripyat being the absolute best. It does pretty much everything right. I dropped in the original weapons renewal, but changed my mind a few hours in because this game doesn't need it. The vanilla weapons are pretty okay, because that's how good the ballistics in this game are. They really stop looking weird once you implement an FOV change mod, which is exactly what I'm recommending. The only mods you need to really get the full enjoyment of Call of Pripyat is an FOV fix and a grass render distance adjustment that really sells the atmosphere of Call of Pripyat. The original game had too tight of an FOV and the grass would cull far too close to the player, but you change these two things and this game looks 3 to 4 years older. But I really mean it, I think this is an amazing way to play Call of Pripyat. It's still technically vanilla, you've only improved things that are already in the game. And I think that does do Call of Pripyat justice because this game's mission design and quest design feels like it's in the same vein as the Witcher games, not only in how they develop quests in an incredibly human way, but also in how they impact the world around you. You could replay this game 5 times and get 5 completely different endings. And you can see how so many games since have tried to come close to achieving what Call of Pripyat has already done and don't quite manage to because they often take more conservative and heavy-handed approaches at the development of their stories, making it painfully obvious that certain decisions will have consequences down the line. Call of Pripyat does it very organically. You're developing the story further down the road and you're not even noticing it. And as far as first-person shooters go, I don't think there's any other that has done it quite like Call of Pripyat. Maybe Black Ops 2 is in contention, but that's a discussion for another time because I will be giving you guys a Call of Pripyat review in 3 weeks. So I'll leave those thoughts for that. But I hear some of you saying that you simply cannot play it vanilla. Fine. Lucky for you, there's an ABR for Call of Pripyat 2. All you have to do is drop it in, boop, and done. ABR overhauls the weapon models and plays with A-Life a slight bit. Something that will give you a very clear idea of how it changes A-Life is by comparing these two PDAs of my stats right before the endgame mission. I went through both of these playthroughs with very similar approaches, so you can kind of see how they're different. Needless to say, ABR has a lot more pew-pew and the pucker factor at times in some moments. Woo! Boy. You might think at first that the game is trying to punish you a bit, but what it really is doing is just making the first area, Jupiter, a little bit more dangerous. ABR is 90% or so faithful to vanilla gameplay-wise and is much better in many other ways while respecting the divine simplicity of the original's mechanics. The original's mechanics are preserved, and yes, slightly enhanced. They're not replaced by spices, they're just better chocolate. And now that I mentioned the divine simplicity of the original's mechanics, here's the Gunslinger mod. Don't get me wrong, the Gunslinger mod needs no introduction. It adds really cool item consumption animations, much better weapon models and animations. It also introduced the 3D PDA? Look, it has the 3D PDA if you want to be impractical. I hate those things. And yeah, it adds a subtle touch of its own spice. Not very invasive though. And I do like the Gunslinger mod. It used to be my go-to recommendation. But after playing ABR, which has a more faithful weapons list to vanilla, it has better gameplay, less fluff, I think ABR does dethrone the Gunslinger mod for me. It's just a lot more fun, and as good as the Gunslinger mod is, it has a number of bugs that might be annoying or tricky to deal with for people in their first playthrough. Just problems that I didn't have with ABR, and if you add to that the fact that ABR is more faithful to the original's mechanics, it's more faithful to the original's weapons list, its overhaul to A-Life makes it better for a second playthrough as well. And it does that without all the fancy camera shake, the item animations, the 3D PDA, and the bugs. ABR is simply a better first-person shooter than Gunslinger, and before you say it turns the game into a power fantasy, what you are seeing on screen is a matter of skill, and skill issues. To Gunslinger's credit though, you can mod more stuff on top of Gunslinger, bespoke to Gunslinger, and you cannot do that with ABR. ABR is locked. So there's a chance that you could find more replayability in Gunslinger. So if you're wondering if all of these are good for a first playthrough, without counting the wildcards, yes, I can confirm that yes, you'll get a pretty faithful experience to the OG with just a few modern commodities and extras. There are other mods that do similar things to the ones I've mentioned here, of course, but I've picked these because I've curated them and I recommend them. It doesn't mean this is the end-all be-all list. At the end of the day, this could serve as a gateway for you all to start getting into the story mods for the OGs, of which there are countless. Some of them Stalker-like, others not. Some ridiculous, others ridiculously fun. And if you come from many hours in Anomaly, you might have been exposed to some critical information that ruins the plot twist of Shadow of Chornobyl, so try playing in this order to make up for that. Call of Pripyat, ABR, Clear Sky, ABR, Shadow of Chornobyl, Memories of the Zone, and Call of Pripyat with the FOV and grass mods. Not only will this serve as a much smoother gameplay transition for you, but it would also give you the opportunity to arrive in Pripyat for a second time, armed with the knowledge and skills to get you a better ending. It will also give Shadow of Chornobyl a chance to build up, and it'll give you some time to forget the quests from SoC that Anomaly reuses. Of course, no one has to play in that order, but I think you would get some enjoyment out of it. I'll see you next week with the Shadow of Chornobyl review, and if you've made it this far, it means that you're one of the real ones, so consider becoming a member of the channel. All members will get an extra inch. That's it from me. Pizza.